Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Common Council meeting this evening. Today is Tuesday, August 8th, and the time is 7 p.m. Our first item on the agenda is the roll call. I will defer to our city clerk, Joanne Marcon, for the roll call.
Mayor Kim Smith.
Here.
Sean McAllister.
Here.
Dan Stevens.
Present.
Stephen Knott.
Present.
Leanne Stokes.
Here.
Larry Jurassic.
Present.
Diane Wolf.
Here. Thank you. We are all in attendance. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we'll have the rules of the City of Onalaska Common Council and its subcommittees. This is a harassment-free forum. The City Council and its subcommittee meetings shall be conducted in a courteous manner. Citizens, council, and committee members shall be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free of slander, obscene remarks, or threats of violence. Sufficient warnings may be given by the sergeant at arms or the chair at any time during the remarks. And in the event that any individual shall violate the rules of decorum as set forth, each person may then be cut off from comment or debate. Item 4 is public input. This is the time where members of the public may address the Common Council. If you choose to do so, please begin by stating your name and your address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Would anyone like to address the Common Council this evening? Second call for anyone wishing to address the Common Council this evening. Third and final call if anyone would like to address the Common Council. Public input is now closed and we will continue with recommendation for approval and or possible action from the following committees, commissions, boards, and officials. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests removal, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in the order of business on the non-consent agenda. Are there any items the councilors would like removed from the consent agenda? Not seeing or hearing anyone, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Your Honor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Motion has been made by Alderperson Dan Stevens. It has been seconded by Alderperson Leanne Stokes to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The consent agenda is approved. Moving on to the non-consent agenda, item number 6, a recap of items pulled from the consent agenda. There were none. Item 7, Finance Committee. I'll turn it over to Committee Chair Leanne Stokes.
Thank you, Mayor. 7A vouchers. Following is a list of monies expended since the last Common Council meeting dated July 11th, 2023. The total is $2,136,419.39. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. I would like to make a motion to approve and place on file.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor from Leanne Stokes to approve the vouchers as stated. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Leanne.
7B is the 2023 general fund financials. Sabrina, would you like to introduce this?
Sure, thank you. So in your packets tonight, starting on page 2 is the general fund financials. If I can draw your attention to page 7, that will bring us to our total budgeted revenues. So year to date, the percentage remaining is 16.74% for us to meet our what we expected for budget. In As of June 30th of 2022, we were at 17.22% remaining. So we are slightly ahead of where we were at in 2022. In regards to expenses for the general fund, if you continue on to page, page 19, I'll draw your attention to total expenses remaining as of June 30th, 2023 is 52.26. As of June 30th of 2022, we were at 55%. So slight difference. The main difference there is in 2023, we had 3 payrolls in the month of June, and in 2022, we had 3 payrolls in the month of July. So I presume once we get to the end of July, we'll be right on par where we were at in 2022. Other things just to note, we did bill out the fire protection services in the revenue section. That check has since come in since June 30th of 2022. So that is a large revenue for us as well. But everything else is pretty much on track. We did receive a bunch of state revenues that were received in the month of July as well. So you'll see that next month.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the 2023 general fund financials and place on file.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Leanne Stokes. It's been seconded by Stephen Knott to accept the 2023 general fund financials and place them on file. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item 7C is the 2023 Omni Center financials. Sabrina, would you introduce this, please?
Yep, thank you. So next in your packet, starting on page 21 is the Omni Center balance sheet. Then if I draw your attention to page 24 is the budget report. If we take a look at page 24, the percentage remaining for revenues year to date is 34.86%. As of June 30th of 2022, we were at 31.14%. One item that did not make it into the revenues by the end of June was the quarterly room tax. I have since calculated that number, and it will be about $36,000 that will be added to our revenues for the second quarter room tax for the Omni Center. So that will likely get us right back on track to where we were at in 2022 for revenues. If we take a look at expenditures, page 26, the year-to-date remaining percentage is 38.78%. In 2022, we were at 48%, so slightly behind where we were at in 2022. At this point, I'm not concerned. We did also for the month of July, I just received a journal entry to do for revenues. It's around $22,000 for like ice rentals, things of that nature for the Omni. So I'm not concerned at this time, but if Dan Wick has anything to add, he can.
I would like to make a motion to accept the 2023 Omni Center financials and place on file.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Leanne Stokes. It's been seconded from Diane Wolf to accept these financials and place them on file. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Item 7D, Gunderson Health Systems parking ramp financials for 2023 second quarter. Sabrina?
Thank you. So also in your packets tonight, starting on page 29, is the 2023 parking ramp operating cost through the second quarter. As you can see, the city of Onalaska does pay quarterly for maintenance for the parking ramp. So you can see that $1,250 is what we pay on a quarterly basis. Otherwise, really the only other big thing to note here is just in regards to expenses, slightly, the first quarter was slightly higher, 2023 to 2022. Second quarter, again, slightly higher. My guess is just the cost of electricity just is going up. So that is why there's an increase there. This is prepared by Gunderson. They send it to us on a quarterly basis. I have asked in regards to the monthly number of cars. They typically, again, they list like the daily counts and then the monthly average. So they didn't keep track of it in 2022, but you can see they are keeping track of it again in 2023.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to accept the Gunderson Health Systems parking ramp financials for 2023 second quarter and place them on file.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. It's been made by Leanne Stokes. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic to approve the parking ramp financials for second quarter. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Last item is 7E, panic buttons for City Hall. Would you like to come forward, Joe? Joe is our IT director, and he would like to explain this.
So when I came on board, there was a project started to install panic buttons in 5 locations in City Hall. Jared had started the project. When I came on board, there had been conversations with La Crosse County on how we can make the phone calls, push the panic button. Automated phone call goes out to 911 and somebody responds. Unfortunately, we actually have a city ordinance that prevents that. And there's also federal regulations that you have to follow. So the chief and I and the assistant chief kind of brainstormed how we could get those panic buttons to get to our officers who are in the same building as fast as possible. Not have people wondering, did somebody respond to it or not? And I guess after talking about it, there's not really a 100% somebody would be able to respond every single time. So the best option would be what I had presented in that memo would be to have Johnson Controls come in. We have to replace the fire and burglar alarm system, the main control panel, because the 23-year-old one doesn't have the ability to do panic buttons. Generally, those have a lifespan of 20 to 25 years. So we're right kind of in a sweet spot where we'd have to be upgrading that eventually anyways, probably within the next 4 or 5 years. By upgrading that panel, then we can wire these panic buttons in and have the ability to push the button. It goes to a call center and that call center will dial 911 for us, meeting all the requirements that the city or that the county and the city have for dialing 911 with a panic button.
Hey, would someone like to make, do you have a question or make a motion or anybody?
I was just wondering
Okay.
if Sabrina had the funds, it looks like in the memo they wanted it to come out of the general equipment outlay IT account. I was just,
Yeah. When this was brought forth, my recommendation was that we would use equipment replacement funds. That's what these funds are for, that we would use the general equipment outlay for IT. So likely that account will go over budget if this gets approved, because this was not a budgeted expenditure for the equipment replacement fund. So it wouldn't affect our general fund, but it would affect equipment replacement fund.
Okay, thank you. We'll start over here. Dan Stevens.
So it looks like you're looking for $14,000 at this point.
I think it would be, oops,
It's like $13,000 would be for the fire and burglar panel upgrade and the actual push buttons to do the panic. And then it's about $3,800 for wiring all of those to the alarm system. And then yearly expenditure would be $220 more a year for the actual monitoring part of it.
I guess I don't have a problem with the concept in general, but here it's August. Is there a reason we wouldn't put this on the capital improvements budget and then the $200 would be in the regular budget going forward. I would, we've come all this way without having the panic button. We're only looking at a few more months, I guess, and then we could put it on bond going forward, but that would be my recommendation.
Okay, let's have staff respond to that and then we'll go to Larry Jurassic's question next and
That
then
was my
Stephen will
question.
come over to you. That was your question as well. Okay, staff, would Sabrina like to respond to that?
Yeah, my only caution would be that I don't know that this would be an item that we could bond for. So this would be likely be like a short-term borrowing would be my guess. And I think Jared is
Okay,
covering it.
Jared,
I-
go ahead.
I would also state it, probably the equipment replacement fund is where it would get budgeted anyway. If we would put it into the equipment replacement budget, probably not in the capital improvement budget. So I think where it's going to come from is where it's going to end up. It's just a matter of if you would like to do that purchase now, or you'd like to wait and we can put it into the budget that's coming forward and have it for discussion at budget time.
Okay, and then Larry, your question got answered or?
Yeah,
Good.
pretty much. It's just, do we want to do it now or do we want to do it next year? That's the only question.
Okay, Stephen?
Yeah, just trying to clarify, it says in the memo that the price includes 6 panic buttons, but when I look at the itemized list, I'm counting 7.
That's last minute, we decided to add the inspection suite as well. That was the only suite that wasn't gonna have one. So then there's basically one in each suite, one up here, and then 2 in the clerk's office. One in the front of the clerk's office and one in the back, in case somebody up at the front
Yeah.
can't reach the button.
All right.
Okay, any other counselor that hasn't spoke yet? Diane?
Thank you. Fire?
This is a panic button. So this only does like, it dials 911. When they call the 911 dispatch, it just simply says there's an emergency here for police presence. It's not medical, it's not meant for fire. We will be, as part of this, upgrading the fire and burglar panel, which gives us more options for other additional things that we might want to add in the future here.
Well, and I guess my point was, we're looking at departments. I just didn't know.
Oh,
I can understand why
yeah, fire,
they're not
no, fire
police.
department is not included in
Right.
that.
I mean, I.
As well
can
as the
understand
police department is also not included.
I mean, I think police is kind of self-explanatory, but I'm just curious why fire department may have been omitted.
I
Throwing that
guess
out
I
there.
the
would
main
say
thing would
one
be
thing
where-
they would have, they likely would have access to a radio
Mm,
if they were in a situation, an emergency, right? They would have a radio.
And this, generally, this section of the building is where most of the public is. I don't think we have many public
Really any.
going up to the fire department looking for things.
But all the more reason why you may want to just think about it,
Correct,
because
correct.
that it could
Yep.
be kind of a obscure, I just want to just put it
Yep.
out there, just so at least we touched on it. Thank you.
Okay, Sean, did you want to say anything? No, Leanne?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion that we refer this to budget time. My intention would be to put it on the short-term borrowing if we could.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Dan Stevens. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic to defer this item to the annual budget under discussion. Counselors, Alder Wolf?
Thank you. So if this were to go to be pushed to the next budget cycle, typically we don't get the money we don't start spending money till like March,
April,
April.
if it's a borrowing item, but my recommendation would be similar to Jared's, that if this is an item that we want to get, that I would likely put it in equipment replacement for the 2024 budget. So it's a matter of, would we purchase it now or would it go through budget and get approved to go in 2024? I would keep it in equipment replacement either way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Alder
Just curious on what is the reasoning for why, Dan, why would you want it on short-term borrowing as opposed to the equipment replacement fund?
I know a lot of times we go off the path, but generally speaking, an unbudgeted item this close to budget time, I think we should just wait and put it through the process that everything else that the city spends its money on would go through. I don't have a problem with this in concept. I mean, we could move it around, but it's not just past budget time. We're almost to budget time. So I would have it be something that would be stacked up against everything else.
Okay, yeah, I don't know that I would feel comfortable waiting that long. If we're going to be waiting potentially upwards of even 8 months. I mean, this is a safety issue for the staff. I just assume move on it immediately. And it sounds like more than likely in the end, it's still going to go to the equipment replacement fund anyway, so.
Okay, did staff want to have a chance to respond to that before we go to Alder Wolf? Any stuff about your feelings of urgency? Not to put people on the spot, but like we want to support you.
I just think that in this day and age, if we're talking waiting a few months, it takes one day, for something to happen. In talking with the county and in talking with the chief and stuff, like by waiting, I mean, if it's March, talking over half a year. So just something to think about.
And when did discussion of this first begin? I mean, I feel like this has been going on for a long time. It was related even with the Park and Rec having only a single exit. I mean, that's been years, right? I mean, over a year. Jared?
Yeah, unfortunately, this project got delayed partially because we did not have an IT person. So we were trying to get it going in first of the year. We were going to use some of the IT funds or the equipment funds for doing the lesser project, which would not have cost as much money. In doing that going forward and then waiting for equipment and then trying to figure out what was going on. And it just lagged. I mean, we just didn't have anybody, we didn't have Joe, so the project just lagged. So unfortunately, and then Joe's been expeditiously working on it for about 2 months now, because just trying to get answers sometimes just takes time. So it has been on the docket since the first of the year,
Seems like a
trying to get it done.
complex issue too. Joe, what is your not to exceed amount for this cost?
It would be about 17,000 total for the wiring, the new fire and burglar panel, the panic buttons. And then again, the yearly expenditure would be an additional $220 a year.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I lost track of where we were with the counselors. I feel like it was over here. Are you good, Diane, or?
Just one last,
Okay.
please. Yeah, I'm looking at 17,800. It's 14,000 for the panel upgrade and 3,800 for the installs.
Okay,
Just
yeah.
want to make sure that
Yep.
that we cover it.
Yep.
As a follow-up to Aldernot, I realize if we did take this out of order, it's not something that I'm ever pro. But to me, $17,800 is a small pittance to go ahead and protect to have that security for our most valuable asset, which is our employees. So I will be voting no for the delay. And if it fails, I will be bringing forth another motion. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, any other counselors? Larry Jurassic?
Yeah, Joy, has any of your clerks voiced an opinion on the necessity for this?
I think it would give our staff quite a bit of peace of mind, something that
Always
we've
had
been,
an Incident where they've had to possibly,
there's been times in the past that we've made a phone call down to the police department and asked for an officer to come down to our suite.
Okay.
But that process can be, there's not always somebody in the PD. So if we call directly down to the PD and get one of the secretarial staff, they have to see if there's an officer in the suite to send down, or we have to call dispatch. And the person at the counter then can possibly see or hear that happening, where a panic button is discreet. And that's the whole concept behind this.
Right.
Ideally, we'll never have to use it. It's one of those things that we would just like the peace of mind of having, but hopefully we never need to use.
And I have been here when staff have requested police to have a presence in a precautionary standpoint. So it is something that's on people's minds. Their safety. Okay, anybody else? Okay, the motion on the floor is to refer this item to budget.
That's for roll call.
Let's do, Joanne, will you just do the roll call and then we'll know where we're at easily?
Sure. Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Stephen Knott,
Nay.
Leanne Stokes,
No.
Sean McAllister, Diane Wolf,
No.
Larry Jurassic.
No.
Okay, that motion fails. Do we have another motion we'd like to bring forward?
I would like to move that we authorize a total of $17,800 for the project to move forward for the panic buttons for City Hall. And the money will come out of the general equipment outlay IT account number 207-51540-810. And for this to proceed as feasibly possible / immediately. That's my motion.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Alder Wolf. It's been seconded by Alder Stokes to move forward with the panic buttons for City Hall, not to exceed $17,800 and to be funded as she described. Is there further discussion on this motion? Alder Knott?
So the motion being made is not to exceed, but they could actually go less.
Yep.
I just want to verify that because I would like to talk offline afterwards. There's two questions that would be getting into too much detail, I think, to have out in the public on security. All right.
Yes, they could spend less.
And and the assumption as part of my motion that remains quiet is the extra $220, that's just looking to be absorbed with the yearly budget.
Yep.
So that's why I did not call that out.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Okay, now the motion on the floor is to approve this as described. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, Joe, for working on this and all of you together.
Thank
Jared, for sticking with it through adverse circumstances till finally you could hand it off. Okay, that does it for the Finance Committee. We'll move on to item 8, the Administrative Committee. Mr. Jurassic. It's a little confusing because we didn't have the A&J meeting, so this is like pretend like you're at A&J, Larry.
Yeah.
A lot more people.
Just takes us out. You just have a bigger audience, but it's the
8A
same.
Special event permit for a mini donut half marathon, Saturday, September 16th, 2023. From approximately 6 to 7:30 PM, crossing,
Sorry, AM.
AM, excuse me. Highway 35 at Rogers Club Road.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the special event permit by Larry Jurassic. It's been seconded by Dan Stevens. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the special event permit, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Back to you, Larry.
Okay, Administration Committee, 8B, special event permit for Gunderson Health Systems, all employees celebration Saturday, September 23rd, 2023, from 2 to 8 PM at Gunderson Health Systems, 3111 Gunderson Drive. I'd like to make this a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the special event permit for Gunderson. Motion was by Larry Jurassic, second was by Dan Stevens. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 9 is the interim city administrator report. Amanda is not able to be here today. She let me know that she will send out an update on the various city projects in an email form as soon as she's able to do so, probably tomorrow. And then the next item B was a discussion regarding the transition plan for the city administrator. So I think we can go ahead and have that discussion in her absence. I know that I feel she's done an excellent job in the position of interim city administrator. And I am thankful that she's willing to help ease the transition as we bring our new person online. And I know we're excited to do that. that being said, we'll open up for discussion if we want to have it regarding any priorities for how that's going to happen. Diane, did you want to go first?
Sure. So my understanding is when I met with Amanda in the position of, in her role as interim, I believe it was last week, talked briefly about I performed a mid-year check-in like she did with all department heads recently. And so I reviewed the goals, the 3 goals that council had set for her. And one of them was a transition plan for the next city administrator. And so I asked her point blank, what did she look at that plan as being? And so she had brought forth a couple of items and made some outward initial thoughts that I was expecting her to be here tonight to share. So I'm guessing, am I doing that, or?
I guess it's up to us, however we want to choose to
Okay.
handle it is.
And I haven't heard otherwise from her, but I guess she told me in that meeting last week I think it was last Wednesday, she was looking to when the next city administrator starts Monday, September 11th, 2023, she was suggesting that she retain the title of interim through the end of the year. She continues at her current salary, which is the dual role salary that we awarded her last year, and that would also continue to the end of the year. And she also asked that the budget be her budget that she gives as the interim city administrator when she comes forward with that budget to council in October. That's all that I've heard. I didn't hear anything else from her as far as how she would be working with the city administrator. I just heard more of what her viewpoint was. So she was looking at continue the increased salary that we awarded her last year through the end of the year, retain the title of interim, and also that the budget would be hers. So that's where we were at. And just as a follow-up, I just want to remind everyone that the premise of what we are operating as of today, last year, August 17th, 2022, council had a special meeting, and we approved, the motion was to appoint Amanda Jackson last August as interim city administrator, effective August 21st, 2022, until a permanent replacement has been hired. And that was the motion that was approved unanimously. So as it stands right now, I read that to be that she is the interim, to serve as the interim until a permanent replacement has been hired, which will be September 11th, unless this body chooses to do something different tonight.
Well, I don't know that is what we need to, okay, whatever you want to talk about.
I'm just saying that, what she is proposing is different than at least how I read this.
I don't have a prepared statement. It's kind of hard to infer that.
I didn't know that with her not being here tonight, I didn't realize that that this was still on the
Okay.
docket. So
Oh, so you want to just defer the conversation? We can do that too.
I think we're here.
It's kind of difficult to defer it too long. We have to, if maybe we have some simple things we can agree on, and if we have some other things that need a little bit more fleshing out and we need to have direct input, then they can be determined, and we can even have a special meeting. But I don't think we can just sit around and wait until September 11th to decide what to do. My primary concern really is with the budget. I feel like she's been a strong leader, pulling everyone together and working cooperatively with people to get the budgets together. And I'll let you talk in 1 second, Sabrina, who is, the person whose opinion we should trust more than anyone's. And it's impossible to think that the new city administrator is going to walk in the door and be able to take that over. We want to set him up to be successful. But we'll let Sabrina talk, and then Stephen.
Thank you, Mayor. My recommendation would be, again, since Amanda has started that process, to finish us through the budget process for sure. It's just nice to know who I'm going to report to in regards to preparation for the budget. We've already started conversations. We've already had meetings. So I guess to just throw someone into that, I think would be kind of difficult. Last year, when Amanda did take over, when I got back from maternity leave, I think it was easier for her to come in because she knew the city already and she kind of knew our policies and how the budget process worked. My only concern is bringing in a brand new person already if several months into the process, that it might be kind of difficult, but that's just my opinion.
And even though he has experience as a county administrator, it's different than being a city administrator. Stephen?
So couple comments. Personally, I think that the new city administrator needs to assume that role on day one. Otherwise, I don't know why we hired them on the day that we did. I have no issue with an additional 10 days, 10 business days, if you will, of compensation, because there still be a dual hat, if you will, of having a city attorney as well, who would also be having a dual hat as a transition lead, if you will. But as far as what needs to be done, well, certainly, we're talking that there needs to be introductions made where I think that Amanda would be taking a lead on that, both internal and external, because there are external parties outside of the city that are also very important people or that would be influencing what we do. As far as the budget would certainly have to be discussed. I hear that's a concern, but any new executive, in my experience, is going to be much more deferential when they first arrive anyway. So I'd be shocked if he's not going to be listening very intently to the recommendations of the director and the outgoing city interim city administrator anyway. I can't imagine he's just going to come in and say, well, no, we're going to redo all this. I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm not really even concerned over that possibility. I think he's going to listen very intently to what's already been done. And then, of course, annual staff cycles will have to be gone through, things like that. So, but the big one for me is we've just hired a new city administrator. I find it very confusing that we would have him show up on day one and not be the city administrator. That just is very confusing to me. I think it would be very confusing to the staff. Who do they go to?
Yeah, I didn't take that to be Amanda's intention at all. I don't know. I mean, obviously I wasn't there for Diane's conversation and that really wasn't the specific of what we were discussing anyway. We were talking more about the budget. So, but I mean, this body has the role here. Dan Stevens?
I think I'd kind of maybe split the difference. I mean, I understand from department heads as they're presenting their budgets, there's somebody new coming in and they don't know how to work with that person, and Amanda's already started the process. I get that. But on the same token, as Stephen pointed out, that we have an executive whose job it is to execute that. So I would hope that for this budget cycle, because of the timing, that it would be a collaborative effort, but ultimately, the new city administrator is going to be the one responsible for implementing that budget over the next year. They should have, I don't know how much input I would say, but they should at least be part of the process because he will be accountable for that. But at this point, department heads still have to present a budget and get that through, and we have to conduct the city business, and that's hard with an unknown. So, I mean, hopefully we have this transition period, and that's what we built into the review. And that's the way that the timing worked out is, granted it's kind of awkward, but why not jump in the fire? I'm not sure how I feel about retaining the higher salary. On the other hand, I see the other point that there is work that is not part of the city attorney role and administering a budget, and that has value to the cities. So maybe a stipend. I think that salary wise, we're way ahead of schedule budget wise because we went a lot longer without a city administrator and a separate city attorney role. But And then also from a morale standpoint, if you're the new city administrator and you come in and we're like, yeah, I just sit on the bench for 3-4 months, that may cause, I don't know how I would take that. So my goal would be, how can we get the interim city administrator who has started the process to synergize or work with the new city administrator who will ultimately be responsible for that. And that's going to be the challenge. I don't think there's an easy answer, but the new city administrator needs to be part of the process. I understand that somebody has to have the final say, but isn't that us? So it's a kind of confusing thing all around, and I'm sure it's going to be messy, but we can get through it.
Right. Alder Stokes?
I agree with Alder Stevens that it should be a collaborative effort. We need to do what's best for the city of Onalaska here, and this has been a longer process than any of us thought it was going to be. And I just think that if the two of them collaboratively work through the budget, he's going to learn, and Amanda's going to be able to give her opinions. I'm not sure how I feel about the pay increases. I think that's something that we need to, or not increases, but keeping it as is. I think that's something that we need to talk about more than, I don't have an opinion on that right now, but I do think that the collaborative effort is absolutely essential for everyone, all of the department heads and City Hall in general. Thank you.
Okay, Sabrina?
Just, I know Alder Stevens mentioned this in regards to budget, but we would be sitting fine if whatever you choose, because we did budget for 8 months of having a city administrator and having, Amanda's role as well. So we would be totally fine in regards to budget. So if that is what is decided, but.
Okay, let's, I'll come back to you, Stephen, but Larry, did you want to make a comment?
Sure.
And then you, and then we'll go back to Stephen.
What I'd like to see is, and the whole argument here is funding on it. What I'd like to see is it broke down into thirds. Have her get the full amount for the first month, a third less for the next month, and a third less for the last month, and dwindle her pay down, and also her responsibilities should be shifting at that same time. It's just a way of looking at it that Rick should be picking up that responsibilities and everything else within the 3-month period. You shouldn't need any more than that at the very max, but it's just that all the work she's going to be putting into it, she should deserve something, and that should dwindle down for the next 3 months is what I look at.
Thank you. Sean?
I just echo the collaboration word here. Oh, sorry. I just echo the collaboration word here, because I think with the rest of it, we get hung up on stuff that really has nothing to do with nothing. And so at this point, I would just say to the group that's doing it, let's just work on the collaboration part of it. Let's get everybody on the same page. Let's get everybody moving forward, get understanding the budget, get an understanding of all of the staff and stuff like that. And let's just focus on that and have a great transition. I think I'd focus at it from that as opposed to titles and.
But yes, but Sean, what are the elements that will make the transition, what will support that collaboration the best, I think is what we're trying to identify.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think at our level, do we need to be below that though? Do we need to be identifying those?
Well, Rick isn't here.
Right.
To do it, and Amanda is the next ranking person. So there isn't really there isn't another body or group to determine, to drive what that collaboration needs to look like. And I think what I'm hearing is, and definitely I'm speaking up in support of Amanda in this case, is that you're asking her to train her boss and to be open-minded and supportive and collaborative and take the work, the blood, sweat, and tears that she's put in to this city and just nicely hand it over to Rick, and not even, but be compensated back to her her future job, her past and her future job, which she's happy to have. But you're asking her to do a lot more than her job of city attorney in that interim period. And I truly, I mean, she's not here to speak for herself, but I don't think she cares about the title. I think what she cares about is the council and the staff supporting her during this transition. And I feel like if she listens to this, which she probably will, I'm not sure she's going to feel the council's support or feel supported as the person to help make the collaboration work. Diane?
Two things. I'd like to reserve my time, but if we could ask Amy, HR, as far as kind of what has happened in the past when we have department heads come in, go out, and budgets, and case in point, we have a new fire chief coming. So kind of draw a parallel. Thank you.
So with the example of the fire chief starting later this month, we have an interim chief until that time. And then at that point, the interim will go back to a former position, and then the new fire chief will step in. And so there isn't sort of that period in that role per se. There has been some overlap in some positions, and that is typically, I guess, from my experience, from what I've noticed with the city and other agencies, is typically when there's an employee that's exiting and a new employee is hired, and there might be two people in that role for that period of time until that employee is no longer accessible to that new employee. So that is pretty typical, I believe, in most organizations. And then again, that interim role, usually once that new person comes on, that position would go back to their former position. But having said that, I mean, again, this is the city's highest executive level position. So if there are exceptions, I mean, this would be the position to have those conversations for, but that is how it's traditionally been done.
Thank you. So following up on that, thank you, Amy. So few things that I have concerns about when we talk about, we're asking questions of council about what that transition is going to be. That was Amanda's, one of her three goals was she was to develop the transition plan. And all I heard was the three things that I mentioned earlier. I haven't heard whether there's going to be, and maybe, I mean, to be fair, I mean, she did say she led with, I haven't had much chance to think about it, but, and then she said those three things, but I haven't heard yet. Is there going to be like a daily check-in or a weekly check-in, or I don't know, because that was her job to develop that, not ours, her job to do, and I would assume to eventually share that with us. So we're all in agreement, or we need to maybe add to it or whatever. And weigh in on it. I have a concern, like, for example, we have a fire chief starting the last Monday of this month of August. And so you heard HR say that, the current acting will, as of that day, will step back into their assistant role and back to the assistant salary. I don't know if people are aware on council, but if we were to continue to pay the city administrator, interim city administrator current salary, we would also be paying the interim more dollars training in the transition plan than the person starting September 11th. I fundamentally have an issue with that. I just don't think that is right. I know when we look at the kind of the schedule that Sabrina Seeger put out as our finance director, kind of like the budget timeline. I see, for example, like through Tuesday, September 12th through Friday, September 22nd, city administrator and finance director will meet with departments if necessary for 2024 budget review. And then after that, then the finance director follows up and then it comes to council. So I can see, I'm kind of leaning towards what Alder Knott has suggested, maybe for a couple of weeks or something. But I cannot in concept agree to that same salary, because like I said, I can't imagine someone coming in new and the person who's easing the transition is getting paid more. I know we've gotten away from stipends for good reasons. I could see maybe a certain percent or something, but I don't know. I can't see certainly paying the current salary through the end of the year. And it's certainly not, it's not any, my comments are not meant as a, in any way negative or disparaging way as far as the work and the value of the current city interim city administrator. I think she's done a fantastic job. It's been a learning process for everyone. I think at the end of it, we've come out stronger at the end of it. And I just, for one, I know that it is imperative, this transition plan, the interim city administrator, how that transition plan works is key to the future of our next city administrator. And
Right.
it's so essential that they are there. But at the end of the day, I think we still have some talking to do.
Okay, so maybe what we need to do is wait until Amanda can present that plan. And then now she'll have this feedback from tonight. And then go from there, even if that means having a special meeting.
I just want to be
next week
fair,
or
like
two.
going forward, because if we set precedent, for example, if we go ahead and continue the salary after the new one starts September 11th, does that mean are we opening ourselves up to the soon to be assistant fire chief saying, well, wait a minute, a new chief is coming in, I'm going to be here, and I'm going to have to help and whatever, and is he going to ask for a stipend also? I mean, that's what I think we want to get away from. Thank you.
Okay, alrighty, let's see. Let's start over by Stephen Knott, and then everyone can have a round and we'll see what we decide to do.
My perception here, you can agree with it or disagree with it. We're making this much harder than it needs to be, folks. This is easy, all right? Executives come and go all the time in the private and the public sector. And when they're hired and they start on day one, they're in charge. I know I personally would be very, very upset if I was hired to do a job and then was told, well, you need a backseat for a while because we don't trust you to be able to comprehend what we hired you to do. All right. That would very much upset me. So the fact is, our staff are professionals. They're not going to disengage just because we have a new face in that office and say, you figure it out. They have ownership on the success of this city, and they're going to help Rick to make sure he understands why they have arrived at the decisions they have, for instance, on this budget. And my gosh, he's worked budgets before. He's worked with staff before. This isn't like something brand new to him. If it was, we wouldn't have hired him. All right. I just, and I do want to make one correction too. I don't think that the outgoing interim is training Rick. She would be leading a transition period, which is primarily information sharing. All right. And I don't think that Amanda's going to hear these minutes and somehow feel insulted like we don't appreciate her at all. Quite the opposite. We're entrusting her to lead this 2-week or whatever transition period and make sure that it provides a continuum of service for the city and for the staff that the city administrator leads. I trust that she's going to be able to do that very, very well. But yeah, I just can't see paying 2 city administrators for the rest of the year. That to me makes no sense. If that was the case, then we should have advertised this to start at the beginning of the next fiscal year. But we didn't do that. We hired him to come in the middle of the budget cycle, which happens all the time in private and public sector all over the country. And it's not that hard, folks. These types of transitions happen every day all over the United States.
Okay, Alder Stevens.
I think overthinking, as somebody said, is we could be doing that. I think in the budget process, maybe it would help if we talked about what it was. I think in department heads, my understanding is kind of create their own budget, and the city administrator is kind of the captain, so to speak. And we have the framework of previous year's budgets that are a pretty good guide. And there's going to be tweaks every year, and that's kind of a role of the city administrator. And that's where, Amanda is going to be pretty vital to the process. because Rick is just, he won't have had the experience, but I mean, ultimately, it's you know, as a department, you kind of know how much you have to work with, and there's going to be a little pushing and pulling of dollars and you know, look at, this is what the budget was last year, and we want to build upon that. But I mean, we know what the line items are. We've had councils where we're talking about, we need to take $50 out of the clerk's office paper expense. I mean, it's not new territory, and it's not, to Stephen's point, something that I would think somebody that's worked as an administrator would not know. So maybe we are overthinking it, but am I correct that the department budgets are made by the department heads, and that kind of gets siphoned up, and the city administrator will compile them essentially and then present, maybe make some suggested tweaks to departments, and then it gets presented to council, and then we do terrible things to the budget. But
Sabrina, would you want to agree or describe what you think the importance is?
Yep, so.
I reserve my time, by the way, but yes.
So the budget process obviously started back in June when we had our meeting where we talked about what our initiatives were. The budgets were due to me on Friday of last week. So now I am taking all of the department requests, which we changed the process this year due to our interim administrator for the better, in my opinion, where her and I will be working through, well, maybe her and I will be working through the initiatives that departments had on whether we're going to include those in the work that I'll be doing over the next month and a half before the new administrator begins. So my only question is whatever is decided, that it just be communicated. Because if I'm going to do all this work and then someone else is going to come in and change everything, that's where my concern lies. Like, if I start a budget with one person, I feel like that should be the person that presents you your budget, that you guys would make your changes to. That's just my opinion. My thought would be that Rick would be involved when he starts and would be part of the conversations, but that it would truly be Amanda's budget.
I did think that I could see from a department head's point of view, if I'm presenting this, who is the person who is the final say, and that's an issue. And I think we should hash that out. If not tonight, by the September meeting.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Stephen?
Just last thing. I said city administrator will be the last one to have a final say on what comes up to the common council. And of course, the common council has the final say overall. But I would be absolutely gobstopped if Rick were to come in and say, go back to the drawing board and do this again. He's not going to do that, folks. I mean, we hired him because he's competent. He's not going to do that. So.
Okay. All right. So we'll let it simmer. Move on to the next thing. Everyone in agreement? No action right now. Good discussion. We got a lot of things out in the air. Okay. Item 10, closed session. To consider a motion to convene in closed session under section 19.85, paragraph 1, paragraph E of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically the Oakwoods Park. If any action is required in open session as a result of the closed session, the council will reconvene in open session to take the necessary action and or continue on with the printed agenda. Do we have a motion?
Your Honor, I move we go into closed session.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alder Dan Stevens. It's been seconded by Alder Larry Jurassic to go into closed session. Excuse me. Voting will be by roll.
Larry Jurassic,
Yay.
Stephen Knott,
Aye.
Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Leanne Stokes,
Aye.
Sean McAllister.
Aye.
Diane Wolf.
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. We are in closed session. The time is 8 p.m. Dan Wick, if you can stay, we anticipate this will be a very short closed session.
Oh, no.
You can stay if you want.
2 minutes?